What's this week like?
It's been harder than the last few years. There's been a lot more attention on it this year, and I thought I'd come to terms with it, but it was hard for me yesterday to hear the news. I mean, you've been hearing the rumblings that there might be a terrorist threat, and quite frankly, months ago I thought, it's not just the 10th anniversary, it's 9/11, 2011.
Yeah.
And I know the terrorists are very much into the symbolism, and I thought there's no way they're not going to try something. So I've been wondering, but it's hard to hear that again. And I've always, since 9/11, I think my biggest heartache every year as September 11 approaches is the thought that it might happen again to someone else. But it is all about us as Americans, about all of us. It's not just about my family or me or what we went through, it's about what we all went through together. And I think to everyone, it brings up those memories of where they were, what they were doing. And I think everyone really does have a story to tell about 9/11. I think there was something significant that happened that day in every individual heart. So it's been a hard week. I have so many emotions about it. I love being able to reach out and to connect with other people at this time of year. But then again, it wears me out.
I'm sure it does. I would be exhausted, especially because every time you talk about it, there's a demand on the emotions. It's not just about you're not just going and doing a job. You're going and talking about a trauma.
Yes, that's true.
In reading what you had written in the newspaper, it sounds like your family has really grasped on to service as a way to honor what happened.
Exactly. I'm thrilled for the kind of children I have, for the kind of family I have. It was always part of our lives before September 11, and it was part of Mary Alice. Mary Alice worked for hospice at the time of her death, and she was a beautiful example to my children. But we always tried to do service, and it was something that my husband and I tried to teach the kids. On September 11th, when we received so much outpouring of love and support, it was almost overwhelming. That was almost as overwhelming as everything else, to receive that in a good way, because it was so beautiful and so unexpected. And because of our membership in the LDS Church, they had done an article in the Church News, which is distributed around the world, and we started receiving cards and letters and things, even little gifts, little cute, darling gifts from children all over the world. And I remember being so overwhelmed when they would come, because you'd open them, and without even reading them, I would just almost feel the love come out of the letter as I opened it. And so because of that, and it gives a lot of support. When you're going through something hard, everyone goes through things that are hard. And as you probably know, when you're going through something hard, it's nice to have some support and maybe distraction even from people trying to help you. It helps you find that strength within yourself. So it meant a lot to us, and it was pretty overwhelming. But our initial response from the very beginning was, we've got to give back and we've got to reach out. And when you experience that kind of hate, it almost feels personal that day.
Yeah.
I know that the hate wasn't directed toward us, our family. It was directed toward America, toward what they perceived that we stood for, that they didn't like, and their desire to put forth their own political and religious and whatever views that they had. So I know it wasn't personal against us, but in a way it felt a little personal that day. And so my initial response was, how can we reach out and love people back? I remember my daughter one time, she's the most beautiful person. She's just special. She was always doing things for other people. She was in high school, and she received a very mean, cruel letter one day from some girls at the school. It was anonymous, but I'm sure they were jealous of her because she was absolutely remarkable. But I remember she curled up in a little ball on my husband's lap. I came in and she was just in the fetal position, you know, crying her eyes out. And she wasn't crying her eyes out because she was feeling sorry for herself as much as she kept saying, I wish I knew who it was so I could go give him a hug and tell him I loved him and tell him I cared about him and see why they felt so much pain in their own lives that they had to reach out and try to hurt me. And it's kind of like that. It's kind of like, you know, somebody really hurt us and somebody did a cruel and evil thing, and yet you want to reach out to the rest of the world at that time and say, please don't be like this. Please learn to love and to respect and to consider other people's lives as being important and purposeful.
Have we done that?
You know, I think Americans are pretty special. My daughters and my sons have all gone on humanitarian junkets, so to speak. My daughters have gone to Africa, to India. My sons have gone to Guatemala, Mexico, Philippines. Americans do a lot of these things. Americans really do look out for the rest of the world quite often. I think we try in our own ways to reach out and do things. But you know, even today, you know, I was listening to the news today about the gay individuals that were, I guess, beat up and abused. And whether or not you believe with somebody else's political philosophy or lifestyle or whatever it is, that's not how you handle problems. You know, you handle things within your own heart and your own mind and the way you live. You don't worry about the way other people live and try to force your will on them or hurt them or be cruel. And so when I hear that, I have to say, well, maybe not. I think we're wonderful people, and I saw so much love on September 11th. So I think it's there. I think everyone has two sides. In fact, you know, and I told the story in that article you referred to about my daughter going to Germany. And she was so overwhelmed with that because we had heard some negativity from Germany about America. We knew that they weren't always very respectful of what we stood for and didn't always think very well of us. But for my daughter to be there on her mission in Germany and to go to that soccer game that day and to have all those German people, I mean thousands of them, literally wave the American flag. And she said first they sang their national anthem, then they sang our national anthem, and which has got to be hard for Germans to do.
I can imagine. It's hard for us to do.
It's hard. But they sang our national anthem, and then they sang You'll Never Walk Alone. And she wrote home this letter, and I hardly could get through it. I had the hardest time getting through it because it was beautiful, and I thought, here's people that don't always like us, but they found in their heart to reach out to America that day and say, you know, we're supporting you, we're sorry for what happened. So it is, people have two sides, and we have to spend more time on the good side than the bad side. And but as you know, I'm on the state PTA board, and we see a lot of bullying in the schools these days. And bullying's a problem, and it comes in many forms, and today with the technology it comes in some pretty scary forms sometimes. And I think we need to start when the children are small and teach them these principles. Sometimes we as adults have a hard time learning, our learning curve's too high. But I've always felt that since 9/11, I had a really neat opportunity, and I told this to the junior high I went to speak to Kaysville Junior High yesterday. And 4 years after September 11th, because I was on the state PTA board, we got to host some Iraqi school teachers. And it was such a neat opportunity. And they were here kind of at a scary time in their country. Saddam Hussein had been overthrown, but there were still assassinations going on in their country, and it was a very unsafe place to be. So they're very presence here put them in danger in their own country. But they came to find out how to redo their education system. Now that they kind of had some more freedom that they didn't have before, they wanted to know how they could fix it. So we visited with them quite some time and shared with them how we do parent engagement at our schools, and the parents are involved with their kids' education. And when we got done, one of the members of our PTA board asked these Iraqi school teachers, because at the time, the news media was very negative about our soldiers being in Iraq. And they were saying, oh, they don't want us there, they want us out, we need to come home. So one of our ladies said to these school teachers, do you want us out of there? How do you feel about the American soldiers being in your country? And these school teachers, literally with tears in their eyes, looked at us and said, we are so grateful to America, because the first thing your soldiers did after they captured Saddam Hussein was to get the kids back in school and to rebuild the schools and to build new schools. And they got the kids back in school, and not only the kids that had been going before, but kids that had not been going. The girls were going. You know, over 80% of their kids, closer to 90%, were now in school, which wasn't the case before that. And then they said something that has really stuck in my heart all of these years. They said, you've given us hope. Because now we can finally teach the kids the truth. Because we were forced to teach them what the government wanted us to teach them before. We were forced to teach them negative things about America. And that's why you got little 8, 9, and 10-year-olds jumping up and down in Afghanistan on the day that 9/11 happened, cheering the loss of life in America. Because they had been taught some things that caused them to think that they had conquered a really bad evil in the world. And so I really believe that the solution to the world's problems is to start with the children and start teaching them now how to be better leaders when they grow up. I think that's important.
I'll be sitting down tomorrow with, I work with the junior high and high schoolers at my church. So tomorrow morning I'll be sitting down with them. What would you have me say to them about it being September 11th, the 10th anniversary? They were anywhere from 2 to 7 years old when it happened.
That they should always remember it and remember what it means. And it's not just the Twin Towers falling down. I mean, that's our image, and it's an important image to keep. As hard as it is for my family to ever look at that, we avoid it at all costs to watch that, but that is the image. But the significance of it is the many layers of what that all means, as far as I said, hate and political power seeking and all the different things that cause war, that cause countries to, you know, try to control each other and do things to each other. They need to understand that they have within their hands the power to change things. And they have within their hands the power to live a purposeful life. They can decide the kind of people they want to become, the kind of things they want to do, and whether they're a doctor or a lawyer or, you know, a plumber or a school teacher or an electrician, they have the ability to change the world. They really do. And I would love to see the kids really get so excited about that possibility of becoming the future leaders and to change things and to make things different and better. It's a big job.
Yeah, no kidding. When you think about this is going back a little bit, when you think about what happened, and you were talking about your daughter and her experience with those kids at school writing the letter, I wonder, with your experience of this event and your family's experience, do you think about the hijackers as individuals? Do you think about as a movement, as an ideology? How do you think about it? And do you and are you angry, or what do you feel?
I think of them as individuals. I think of them as a group. I think of them as an ideology. All of those things. because individually they made the choices they made. You don't, I would hope that most adults are not like sheep and just do things blindly without thinking about them. But it's hard for me to know how to share this with people, because there's some private things in my own belief system and my own heart that are difficult sometimes to share, because maybe others don't feel the same way I do. But I've had the opportunity in my life to be associated with some of the most some of the most significant events in Utah, where people were experienced murders and horrible things in their lives. And I watched these individuals, because of their belief system, forgive and move on in amazing positive ways. And before 9/11, I wondered about that, and I thought, if somebody murdered a member of my family, I think I would hate them, and I think my God, my Father in heaven, would maybe forgive me for having bad feelings toward them, even though we're commanded to love. But I thought, that would be different. If it's somebody I love so much, the Heavenly Father would understand those feelings. But on 9/11, I'll never forget the moment that a news reporter put a microphone in my face and said, "Do you want revenge, and do you hate these people?" And within that instant, within just that very instant, I went, "No." And it was such an awakening to my own self that I couldn't hate. And it taught me a valuable and important lesson that also has been reflected in my children, is if you're trying to live your life as your God or your Heavenly Father would want you to live it, and if you're incorporating your belief system and honestly trying to be the kind of person you should, there's no room for hate. And even when you are given a reason to hate, you don't. And that was a beautiful reality to me that I was glad to find out about myself and about us as individuals, that we can rise above the hate, we can rise above the cruelty of that day, and we don't need to. And it was actually easy to forgive. I want the hate stopped. I want the movements like that stopped, because they're destructive. No one wins in those kind of things, and they're very destructive. But at the same time, we were able to forgive very easy and move on, and I think that takes a tremendous burden off of us to not be thinking of those people and those ideals. And that's kind of a nice thing not to have to worry about, and just think, we want them to understand us just like we need to understand them better too.
The reason I was rudely scrolling through this when we
You're not
when
rude.
we were talking at the beginning, well, but I was looking down because
okay.
I wanted to get to a part of what you had written, that and it comes right after the story that you already told, and I'm wondering if you could even read it for us. But what I'll have to do is show you. Have you ever used a Kindle before?
Oh yes, I love my Kindle.
Oh, you have a Kindle? Terrific.
I love my Kindle.
Well, because this is the end on a daily basis. It's just this paragraph that describes what happened there, and I wonder if you could start there and just read
Sure.
until the end of that paragraph for us, and then tell me what you think about that, because you asked that last question. What if we did that on a daily basis? What if those feelings remained? And I guess I want you to
Pontificate.
take that a step further after you read. So yeah.
Okay, shortly after September 11th, our daughter Marianne was serving her mission in Germany and attended a soccer game with her mission district. Before the game started, the crowd pulled out American flags and waved them and sang the song, "You'll Never Walk Alone," as a show of love and support toward America. Marianne was overcome at the sea of American flags in that German stadium. Seeing hearts softened with love and compassion was a remarkable thing after September 11th. What would the world be like if that feeling had continued? Why can't we all feel that unity and concern for each other on a daily basis?
Those are good questions.
They're really good questions, and I think the answer lies a little bit in selfishness and lack, and maybe pride. I think the greatest blessing, and I'm still working on it, I have not accomplished it, but to be able to forget myself is something that is a challenge that I'm trying to do in the way I live my life. You know, I've had some hurts where people I love, people, you know, I admire, have maybe hurt my feelings because they treated me a certain way or didn't appreciate my efforts on their behalf or something. And when I'm sitting there feeling sorry for myself, I realize it's really a selfish feeling to feel sorry for yourself. And I need to start thinking about them, because usually people do things because of their own insecurities. So when we can start thinking about where other people are at instead of ourselves and where we're at and worrying about where we're at, I think that that is a huge step in developing that understanding and that compassion for everyone else in the world. And I don't think we can get there until we forget about ourselves a little bit.
You believe Mary Alice and Carolyn are still here, that they can see what's happening, what your children are doing, what you're doing?
I think they have a knowledge of what's here. I don't know how that works since I've never been to the other side. I think they have a knowledge. I think that people who have passed from this life are probably pretty busy. I don't think that they're just hovering around watching everything we do or directing our lives necessarily. You know, that's up to us. But I do think sometimes we have guardian angels. Mary Alice, a couple months before she was killed, we were excited about Marianne's mission call and getting her ready to go on her mission. And we said, Mary Alice, you need to serve a mission for the church. And she was laughing and she thought that'd be great. And she says, oh, I don't know. And at the time she was serving as an usher on Temple Square and loved that, and she considered that a mission. But she says, you know, I don't know if I'll ever make it on my own mission. She says, but if I'm on the other side and I'm an angel, I will fly around behind you on your missions and help you. So we laugh about that, and I don't know if she can actually, you know, go with us in the places we go, but you know, I do think sometimes there are little guardian angels up there, which we have experienced moments when it seemed like there was something from beyond, that greater than ourselves, that was influencing things that happened in our lives.
Are there things that you and your children have done that you think you would not have done had this not happened? Have they inspired you all to do more than you might have done?
See, that's a hard question because you don't know what you would do. I do know this. I do know everything we do has more purpose and more significance now. And the family, when you go through hard things, like my daughter gave my son her kidney. He had gone into kidney failure, and she donated her kidney to him, and it was that's quite the story too. But the thing is when we go through these hard times, and we almost lost her. She almost lost her life giving her kidney to her brother. But the family gathers together, you know, and I like to refer to it as the wagon circling, because it feels like it. It feels like every time something bad happens, our family immediately has learned from September 11th to pull together and garner the strength from each other and to face whatever it is together. And I think that family strength and unity is so important, and it's made a difference in our lives. And so we've been able to face lots of things with very little negativity, with very little maybe negative results, because we've been able to know that we need to move forward and not back and not to the side. I used to have a song that the kids, when they were little, sing, let's go on a bear hunt, you know, and I love singing this to them. And I told them this right after September 11th. I said, you know how we sang that song together, and you get to the river, you know, there's a river, I see a river. You can't go under it. You can't go around it, you can't go over it, you have to go through it. You know, and the wheat field and everything else, you have to go through it. And, you know, so we've learned that when things come up, we have to go through it. And that's been a great lesson for us, because I think we get through the bad things faster. And we don't dwell on them as much, because we know we have to get to the other side. And so that's our whole focus, is let's get to the other side as fast as we can.
That's wonderful. My last question is, it feels like the 10 years after, it feels like our country's in a pretty negative place. It feels like people are at each other, polarized, that you can disagree without also demonizing, you know, that kind of thing.
Exactly. I do know.
Yeah.
You know, it's like everybody wants to blame everybody else for everything that happens. Nobody wants to take responsibility. And I think if there was one thing we could do from September 11th on, it would be take responsibility for the things that we are at fault in. I mean, I think America's pretty wonderful, and I think our values our freedoms, all of those things are so important for us to protect and stand up for and defend with everything we have. But we also need to look sometimes at, but what could we do better? And I think the thing that causes people to be at each other's throats is nobody wants to take responsibility. You know, my husband is the greatest man on earth in my eyes. And throughout our marriage, I'm gonna get emotional, throughout our marriage, and we hardly ever fight. We get along so beautifully. But whenever there's been that moment of we don't agree with each other, or I might be a little ticked off at him for something, he always apologizes to me, even when he's in the right. And that has been a lesson to me in a way, because, you know, if he was thinking, oh, I'm right, and I'm thinking I'm right, and we dig in, then nothing's ever accomplished. But when he apologizes to me, and I know that I was wrong and he was really right, it softens my heart a lot. And I think, okay, he's trying to take responsibility for the situation here, even though it's probably more on my shoulders. And that's taught me a great lesson. I've thought, you know, if everybody would try and take responsibility for their part of the problem, then we could find the solutions. So I think that the negativity can be done away with.